What's the real price you're paying for your comfort? Have you ever noticed how the most extraordinary people never seem to take the easy path? There's a reason for that, and it might completely change how you approach your life from this moment forward. When we look at the titans of success, the innovators, the champions, the revolutionaries, they all share one striking commonality that most people miss entirely. They've mastered the art of embracing discomfort when everyone else runs from it. Has this ever happened to you? You have that brilliant idea, that perfect vision of what you could accomplish, but something holds you back from taking the first step. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. The truth that most aren't willing to face is that nothing truly extraordinary has ever been built on convenience. The greatest achievements in human history required someone to push beyond the boundaries of what felt comfortable. Success doesn't patiently wait for those seeking the perfect moment. It gravitates toward those who move decisively while others stand frozen in hesitation. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share might completely transform your understanding of what separates those who merely dream from those who actually achieve. It's not what most success gurus will tell you. The fundamental difference between success and failure isn't found in talent, luck, or even intelligence. These are merely supporting actors in the grand production of achievement. The true star, the element that determines everything, is discipline. That seemingly simple yet profoundly powerful force that compels you to rise when your body begs for more sleep. The internal commander that orders you to continue when motivation has long since abandoned you. What you're about to discover might surprise you. The most successful people in the world aren't necessarily the most gifted, they're the most disciplined. This discipline manifests as the ability to take action when everyone else succumbs to hesitation. It's the voice that whispers now when every fiber of your being screams later. It's the invisible force that drags you out of bed at 5 a.m. when your dreams require early mornings, that keeps you working when others have gone home, that pushes you to complete that final repetition when your muscles burn with exhaustion. And here's where most people misunderstand the entire concept of discipline. They wait for motivation to strike before taking action, completely inverting the true relationship between the two. The disciplined few understand that action comes first, motivation follows. This fundamental reversal of conventional thinking is precisely why so many of us remain stuck in the cycle of unfulfilled potential. This revelation sparked a profound transformation in my own journey when I realized that the hidden truth behind achievement isn't about feeling ready, it's about commanding yourself to begin regardless. Subscribe now to get more powerful content like this delivered straight to your feed. It's the discipline that creates results. Think of your mind as a kingdom, and you are its ruler. In every kingdom, someone must give the orders. The question becomes, are your emotions ruling you or are you ruling them? Most people live their entire lives as servants to their feelings, waiting for the perfect emotional alignment before taking action. But this mindset creates a fundamental inversion of power that keeps dreams perpetually out of reach. The decision that separates dreamers from doers is remarkably simple, yet devastatingly powerful. When your mind whispers, "I'll do it later," you must immediately respond with, "I'll do it now." This single choice, this moment of self-command, creates a ripple effect that touches every aspect of your existence. The impact of commanding yourself rather than negotiating with your emotions cannot be overstated. What most don't realize is that our brain has evolved to conserve energy, which means it naturally gravitates toward what feels comfortable in the moment. This biological reality creates an internal resistance that must be overcome through deliberate decisions, not through Waiting for motivation. The revelations I've witnessed working with thousands of people confirm this pattern. Those who wait for inspiration rarely find it, while those who move despite its absence seem to attract it magnetically. This brings us to perhaps the most counterintuitive insight on the journey to achievement. Motivation isn't something you wait for. It's something you manufacture through deliberate action. The conventional wisdom has it exactly backward. Action doesn't follow emotion. Emotion follows action. The mindset shift required here is profound. You move first, and the feeling follows. Consider the mornings when you didn't feel like exercising, but forced yourself to begin anyway. Remember what happened after those first 10 minutes? Suddenly, energy appeared that wasn't there before. This isn't coincidence. It's the natural consequence of a universal principle that few have fully grasped. Behind the scenes of every successful person's life, you'll find this same pattern, repeated endlessly. They don't wait until they feel ready. They start before they're ready and allow the momentum to generate the emotional fuel they need. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this principle manifests in your daily decisions. When you understand that your feelings are lagging indicators rather than leading ones, everything changes. Your relationship with procrastination transforms. Your ability to push through resistance heightens. The gap between intention and action narrows until they become nearly indistinguishable. If you're nodding along right now, write "I command my actions" in the comments below. I'd love to know who among you is ready to embrace this fundamental shift in perspective. The daily decisions you make when faced with resistance are where your legacy is truly forged. Let's explore what happens in those critical moments when your body and mind are screaming for you to stop. This is the battleground where champions separate themselves from the merely talented. True strength, the kind that transforms ordinary people into extraordinary achievers, emerges precisely when you persist, despite three powerful forces working against you: physical exhaustion, the absence of external recognition, and your body's biological signals demanding you quit. The revelation that changed my own journey was realizing that these moments of maximum resistance are actually gateways to unprecedented growth. When you continue pushing, move forward after your muscles burn, after your mind begs for distraction, and after the initial excitement has long faded, that's when the alchemy of transformation occurs. It's in these silent moments, when no one is watching and no one is cheering, that your character crystallizes into something remarkable. The resilience you build in these moments becomes an unshakable foundation that supports everything else in your life. Behind the scenes of every overnight success story lies a hidden truth. Years of pushing through invisible barriers when quitting would have been the easiest path. What appears as talent to the outside world is often nothing more than this uncommon persistence, continuing when others would have stopped. This brings us to a profound mindset shift that few are willing to confront. There are two distinct types of pain in life, and you will inevitably experience one of them. The first is the pain of discipline, temporary, purposeful, and ultimately empowering. The second is the pain of regret, lingering, hollow, and permanently debilitating. The wisdom lies in recognizing which pain serves your journey and which derails it. On your darkest days, when doubt clouds your vision and struggle seems endless, remember this fundamental truth. The pain of discipline lasts minutes, sometimes hours, but the pain of regret endures a lifetime. This perspective illuminates your choices with remarkable clarity. What makes this insight so powerful is that it forces a decision at every challenging moment. Will you embrace the temporary discomfort that builds your future, or will you surrender to momentary relief that eventually crystallizes into lasting disappointment? This is the crossroads where destinies diverge. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that these difficult moments aren't obstacles to your success. They are precisely what create it. Each time you choose the harder path, you're not just completing a task. You're literally rewiring your neural pathways to normalize higher standards of performance and resilience. What if you approached each moment of resistance not as something to avoid, but as the exact medicine your growth requires? What if the very struggle you're trying to escape is the catalyst for the breakthrough you've been seeking? This fundamental reorientation to challenge represents the ultimate mindset revolution. If you've ever pushed through when everything in you wanted to quit, type worth. The struggle below. I'm curious how many of you have already experienced the power of this principle firsthand. This principle of persistence extends far beyond just physical challenges. It permeates every dimension of achievement. Let's examine what happens at the neurological level when you make the decision to continue despite all internal resistance. Your brain, designed primarily for survival and energy conservation, interprets discomfort as a threat. When you override this protective mechanism, you're literally rewiring your neural pathways to accommodate greater challenges. What's fascinating about this biological transformation is how it accumulates over time. Each instance of pushing beyond your perceived limits doesn't just complete the task at hand, it permanently elevates your baseline capacity. This is why those who consistently choose discipline develop an almost supernatural resilience that appears mystical to others. Behind this mystical quality lies a simple truth. They've accumulated thousands of moments where they chose discomfort over ease. The revelation that changed my perspective forever came when I realized that exhaustion itself isn't a signal to stop. It's merely information. The breakthrough happens precisely when you reinterpret this signal not as a barrier but as a gateway. This mindset revolution transforms exhaustion from an endpoint into a milestone along your journey of growth. Consider the profound difference between the amateur and the master in any field. The amateur stops when they're tired. The master understands that real progress begins at the point of fatigue. This single distinction creates an unbridgeable gap between mediocrity and excellence. What if you approached every challenge with this understanding? What if the moment you felt like quitting became your signal to lean in further? Join our community of action takers by hitting subscribe. Transform your potential into achievement with every video. The hidden truth that most never discover is that discipline isn't about perfect consistency, it's about recovery rate. Everyone falters. Everyone faces days filled with doubt and struggle. The difference lies in how quickly you reset after a setback. Masters don't avoid failure, they simply return to their practice with remarkable speed after each stumble. This brings us back to our fundamental choice between two pains. When temptation whispers to take the easy route, remember that momentary relief comes with a shadow cost. The decision to postpone discomfort doesn't eliminate it. It transforms it into something far more corrosive: regret. What most fail to grasp is that regret compounds just as powerfully as growth, but in the opposite direction. The path of discipline reveals another unexpected gift: clarity of purpose. When you consistently choose the harder path, you develop an unshakable confidence in your own word. This self-trust becomes the bedrock upon which all other achievements stand. Through the fog of fatigue and doubt emerges a crystal-clear vision of who you're becoming. If you've ever experienced that moment of clarity after pushing through when everything in you wanted to quit, type breakthrough moment in the comments. I'd love to hear about those pivotal instances that shaped your journey. Let's explore something that often goes unnoticed in the architecture of achievement: the hidden cost of hesitation. Each time you delay taking action on something you know you should do, Something subtle but significant happens in your brain. You're not just postponing a task, you're actually rewiring your neural pathways to normalize hesitation as your default response. This revelation transformed my understanding of procrastination completely. What I discovered through both research and personal experience is that hesitation isn't merely a passive state, it's an active prison that tightens its grip with each postponement. The mind operates on a fundamental principle that few fully grasp. Every decision creates a precedent for future decisions. When you choose to delay action today, you're not just affecting today's outcome, you're literally programming tomorrow's response pattern. The breakthrough insight that changed everything for me was realizing that willpower functions like a muscle. It strengthens through use and atrophies through neglect. Each time you override hesitation and complete what you set out to do, you're not just checking off a task, you're reinforcing neural pathways that make decisive action more natural in the future. This compounding effect works both ways, creating either an upward spiral of increasing resolve or a downward cycle of weakening determination. Behind the scenes of every transformational journey lies this common thread. The masters have trained themselves to act immediately upon recognizing what needs to be done. They don't engage in the internal negotiation process that paralyzes so many of us. This mindset shift from debating with yourself to commanding yourself creates an entirely different relationship with productivity. What's particularly fascinating is how this principle intersects with our natural tendency toward what psychologists call the path of least resistance. Your brain, designed primarily for survival, instinctively conserves energy whenever possible. This biological imperative manifests as that familiar voice that whispers, "Just 5 more minutes," or "I'll start tomorrow when conditions are perfect." The revelation that unlocked my own progress was recognizing these negotiations for what they truly are: sophisticated forms of self-deception. When you find yourself bargaining with your tendency toward inaction, you've already lost the battle. Champions develop an unflinching clarity about this truth. They don't negotiate with laziness. They recognize these internal dialogues as resistance in disguise and respond not with debate, but with immediate action. Perhaps the most liberating realization in this journey is understanding that the perfect moment is a mirage that forever recedes into the distance. It doesn't exist in some future alignment of circumstances. It exists precisely when you decide to begin. This decision point represents the ultimate crossroads between potential and achievement. The ideal conditions you're waiting for are actually created by your decision to start, not the other way around. If you've recognized that voice of negotiation in your own mind trying to delay your progress, type "no more waiting" in the comments. I'm curious how many of you have identified this pattern in your own experience. This moment-by-moment decision to act rather than hesitate creates something far more powerful than fleeting motivation. It builds momentum. Let's explore this distinction because it represents one of the most misunderstood aspects of achievement. Most people chase motivation, that emotional high that makes action feel effortless. But the hidden truth that transformed my understanding is that motivation is unreliable precisely because it's emotion-based, and emotions, by their very nature, fluctuate. What the masters have discovered is that momentum operates on entirely different principles. Unlike motivation, which depends on how you feel, momentum follows the laws of physics. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. When you take control of your thoughts and establish consistent routines, you create a force that literally bends circumstances in your favor. This isn't mystical thinking, it's the practical reality of how achievement works. The revelation that changed everything for me was realizing I didn't need to feel motivated every day. I needed to create systems that generated momentum regardless of my emotional state. This mindset shift from dependency on feelings to trust in process creates an entirely different relationship with productivity. Behind the scenes of every extraordinary achievement lies this common pattern: sustained action creates its own energy. This principle of momentum naturally connects to another cornerstone of achievement that few fully embrace: the absolute necessity of completion. Half-finished projects don't just represent incomplete work, they represent incomplete transformation. Each abandoned goal, each partially completed task, each "I'll get back to this later" creates an energetic drain that subtly undermines your belief in yourself. What separates champions isn't necessarily their speed or even their talent, it's their unwavering commitment to finishing what they start. This characteristic becomes particularly crucial during what psychologists call the messy middle, that challenging phase between the excitement of beginning and the satisfaction of completion. This is where most people abandon ship, but it's precisely where the most valuable growth occurs. The decision to force yourself to complete what you begin rewires your entire identity. Each finished task becomes evidence that reinforces your self-concept as someone who honors commitments. This internal credibility builds upon itself, creating a foundation of self-trust that transfers to every other area of your life. The breakthrough insight is that partially finished work inevitably leads to partially lived lives, fragments of potential never fully realized. What if you approached each endeavor with the non-negotiable expectation of completion? What if you eliminated the option of abandonment altogether? This single decision to finish what you start regardless of changing emotions or circumstances creates a trajectory of achievement that compounds over time. The journey of mastery isn't about perfection, it's about persistence through imperfection until completion. If you've ever experienced that profound satisfaction of pushing through resistance to complete something you nearly abandoned, type "finisher's mindset" below. I'm curious how many of you have tasted the unique power that comes from honoring your commitments to the end. Let's explore a paradigm shift that revolutionized my own understanding of inspiration. Most people spend their lives waiting for that magical spark, that moment when motivation, clarity, and energy perfectly align. They're waiting for lightning to strike. But what if I told you that you are the lightning? This revelation transformed everything for me. You don't need to wait for the spark. You can become it. The blueprint for extraordinary achievement isn't found in waiting for perfect conditions. It's discovered in the decision to generate your own fire, regardless of circumstances. This isn't just motivational rhetoric. It's the operating system of every person who's ever created lasting impact. Behind the scenes of breakthrough moments lies this common thread. Someone decided to push through fatigue, boredom, and fear, rather than surrendering to them. What fascinates me about this principle is how it completely inverts our conventional understanding of inspiration. Most wait for inspiration to strike before taking action. But the masters understand that inspiration is manufactured through deliberate movement. They've discovered that power doesn't precede action, it emerges from it. This single reversal of sequence changes everything. The transformation begins the moment you embrace this truth. The spark you've been waiting for has been within you all along, dormant, waiting for you to activate it, through decision rather than emotion. When you make the powerful choice to become the initiator rather than the reactor, you step into dimensions of personal power that most never experience. Consider the profound difference between these two approaches to life. One waits for conditions to align perfectly before beginning. The other creates alignment through the very act of beginning. One remains at the mercy of external circumstances. The other becomes the architect of circumstances. This fundamental shift in orientation doesn't just change what you achieve, It revolutionizes who you become in the process. This principle connects directly to another revelation that changed my perspective forever. Success isn't something that's given. It's something that's forced out of resistance. This insight completely reframes our relationship with obstacles. What if the very challenges you've been trying to avoid are precisely what will forge your greatest strengths? Every time you rise when circumstances make it difficult to do so, you're not just completing a task, you're literally building an unshakable version of yourself. This compounding effect of choosing difficulty over comfort doesn't just change your results, it transforms your identity. The hidden truth of achievement is that resistance isn't the enemy of success, it's the essential ingredient. What's particularly powerful about this principle is how it liberates you from dependency on external conditions. When you understand that resistance is not just inevitable but necessary, you stop waiting for the path to clear before moving forward. You recognize that the obstacles aren't in the way, they are the way. This mindset revolution turns every challenge from a barrier into a building block. The journey of mastery reveals this counterintuitive wisdom. The difficulties you're facing right now aren't preventing your breakthrough, they're creating it. Every moment of resistance offers a choice: retreat to comfort or advance into growth. And in that decision point lies the difference between ordinary and extraordinary. If you've experienced this profound shift from seeing obstacles as barriers to recognizing them as builders, type "resistance builds strength" below. I'd love to hear how this principle has manifested in your own journey. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding the architecture of achievement. There's a profound truth that revolutionized my own journey when I realized that discipline isn't just a quality of successful people, it's the actual bridge between potential and accomplishment. This insight completely transformed how I approached my goals. Think about it this way. There exists a gap between who you are today and who you're meant to become. This gap isn't crossed through talent, intelligence, or even opportunity. The only reliable bridge across this chasm is discipline. What makes this revelation so powerful is understanding that this bridge is extraordinarily fragile when built incorrectly. When emotions are allowed to lead the construction process, the bridge collapses under the weight of inconsistency. The hidden truth that changed everything for me was recognizing that emotions make terrible leaders but excellent followers. When allowed to dictate your actions, emotions create a path of zigzags rather than a direct route to your destination. This erratic movement ensures you'll never build enough momentum to overcome the gravitational pull of mediocrity. The breakthrough happens when you invert this relationship, when discipline leads and emotions follow. This fundamental reorientation creates what psychologists call identity-based habits rather than outcome-based habits. Instead of focusing solely on the result, you begin embodying the characteristics of the person you're becoming. The transformation occurs not just in what you accomplish, but in who you become through the process. This identity-level shift represents the deepest form of change possible. It alters not just what you do, but how you define yourself. Behind the scenes of every journey of mastery lies this common pattern. The champions develop an almost spiritual relationship with discipline. They don't see it as punishment or restriction, but as liberation. They've discovered that discipline doesn't confine, it focuses. It doesn't diminish, it amplifies. This perspective shift creates an entirely different relationship with the daily. Actions required for extraordinary achievement. What's particularly fascinating about this principle is how it connects to momentum. The revelation that changed my approach forever was understanding that winners don't wait for the perfect wave of inspiration before paddling. They create their own wave through consistent movement. They generate momentum through disciplined action, regardless of circumstances, regardless of feelings, regardless of apparent progress. This mindset revolution eliminates the dependency on external conditions that keep so many trapped in cycles of starting and stopping. When you understand that momentum isn't found, but created, you stop waiting for the perfect moment to begin. You recognize that the perfect moment emerges precisely because you began. This causal reversal, understanding that action creates conditions rather than conditions creating action, unlocks levels of achievement that remain inaccessible to those waiting for inspiration to strike. The journey of mastery reveals this paradoxical wisdom. The more you rely on discipline rather than motivation, the more motivated you actually become. This occurs because discipline generates results. Results create confidence, and confidence fuels motivation. This virtuous cycle becomes self-sustaining once initiated, but it only begins through disciplined action when motivation is absent. If you've experienced this powerful shift from waiting for inspiration to creating it through discipline, type "discipline first" below. I'd love to hear how this principle has manifested in your own experience. Let's explore another dimension of this principle that completely transformed my understanding of achievement. When we examine the fundamental nature of emotions, we discover something that explains why so many remain trapped in cycles of inconsistency. Emotions, by their very design, are unstable. They rise and fall like tides, often triggered by external circumstances beyond our control. They're valuable as signals, but dangerous as guides. The revelation that changed everything for me was recognizing that discipline functions with entirely different properties. Unlike the fluid, changeable nature of feelings, discipline operates like steel. Unyielding when you're tired, steadfast when you're frustrated, and present when no one is watching. This metallurgical metaphor isn't just poetic. It represents a profound truth about the architecture of achievement. Behind the scenes of every journey of mastery lies this common foundation. The champions have learned to build their actions on the bedrock of discipline rather than the shifting sands of emotion. They've discovered that steel-like consistency creates results that emotional intensity never could. This blueprint for transformation doesn't require extraordinary talent. It requires extraordinary commitment to following through, regardless of fluctuating feelings. What's particularly illuminating about this principle is understanding that you're not just engaged in external battles for achievement, you're fighting an internal war every single day. Each morning presents a renewed battlefield against your own feelings. Fatigue whispering to stay in bed, lack of motivation suggesting you skip your practice, boredom tempting you toward distraction, and doubt questioning whether your efforts even matter. The hidden truth of achievement is recognizing that these emotions aren't just random sensations, they're sophisticated excuses disguised as feelings. They speak the language of self-preservation, constantly pulling you toward comfort and away from growth. The breakthrough insight is understanding that listening to these whispers doesn't protect you, it diminishes you. Every time you surrender to these emotional suggestions, you lose ground in your journey toward mastery. This perspective shift completely reorients your relationship with challenging feelings. Instead of seeing fatigue as a signal to stop, you recognize it as resistance indicating growth. Instead of interpreting boredom as a sign you're on the wrong path, you understand it as the necessary threshold before breakthrough. This mindset revolution transforms obstacles from barriers into waypoints, necessary landmarks on the journey toward extraordinary achievement. What makes this principle so powerful is that it liberates you from the tyranny of feelings. When you understand that emotions make terrible masters but excellent servants, you establish a new hierarchy within yourself. You don't ignore your feelings, you acknowledge them while maintaining your authority over them. This internal leadership creates a clarity of purpose that transcends momentary discomfort. The journey of mastery reveals this essential wisdom. Feelings will always fluctuate, but your commitment doesn't have to. The decision to move forward, regardless of emotional weather, creates a consistency that generates results beyond what most believe possible. This isn't about suppressing feelings, it's about preventing them from suppressing your potential. If you've experienced this internal battle between what you feel like doing and what you know you should do, type "discipline over feelings" below. I'd love to hear how you navigate this fundamental challenge on your own journey. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding the true nature of our emotional landscape. There's a profound revelation that completely shifted my perspective. On achievement, our emotions weren't designed for progression, they were designed for protection. This biological reality explains so much about why the path to extraordinary achievement often feels uncomfortable. Your emotional system evolved during times when survival was the primary objective. It's calibrated to seek comfort, avoid pain, conserve energy, and maintain safety. These are brilliant adaptations for surviving in a harsh, unpredictable environment. But here's the breakthrough. Insight: the very same emotional mechanisms that kept our ancestors alive now often prevent us from truly living. They seek comfort rather than growth, immediate pleasure instead of lasting purpose, and safety instead of significance. This explains one of the most counterintuitive aspects of achievement, why success often feels uncomfortable. The discomfort isn't a sign something's wrong, it's evidence you're moving in exactly the right direction. When you push beyond your comfort zone, your emotional alarm systems activate, warning you to retreat to safety. But the transformation occurs precisely when you acknowledge these warnings without obeying them. Behind the scenes of every journey to mastery lies this common thread. The champions have learned to recognize that their emotions are valuable messengers but terrible decision-makers. They've discovered that emotions provide important data but dangerous directives. This fundamental distinction changes everything about how you navigate challenges. This revelation connects directly to another principle that completely altered my relationship with achievement. Your feelings are not facts. They're interpretations, often based on incomplete information, past experiences, and biological impulses, not objective reality. This single insight has the power to liberate you from countless limitations. The journey of mastery reveals this essential wisdom. Fatigue doesn't mean you can't continue. It's just information that your body is working hard. Doubt doesn't mean you won't succeed. It's just uncertainty about the outcome. Fear doesn't mean you should stop. It's just your system detecting potential risk. When you understand that emotions offer excuses while discipline delivers results, you gain the ultimate freedom, the ability to act independently of how you feel. What's particularly transformative about this principle is how it completely reorients your relationship with difficult emotions. Instead of being controlled by feelings, you learn to observe them with curiosity while maintaining your commitment to your chosen path. This emotional intelligence doesn't mean suppressing feelings. It means preventing them from suppressing your potential. The blueprint for extraordinary achievement requires this fundamental shift, moving from being emotion-led to being purpose-led. When your actions align with your deepest values, rather than your fluctuating feelings, you develop a consistency that generates remarkable results. This internal alignment creates a powerful authenticity that no amount of emotion-driven action could ever produce. If you've experienced that profound moment when you recognize that your feelings were clouding your judgment rather than clarifying it, type "emotions aren't facts" below. I'd love to hear about those breakthrough moments of emotional clarity in your own journey. Let's examine what truly separates extraordinary achievers from everyone else. When we study those who have reached the pinnacle in any domain, whether athletics, business, art, or service, We discover they all operate with a singular code that governs their actions: discipline over emotion. This revelation transformed my understanding of achievement when I realized it wasn't about eliminating emotions, but establishing a clear hierarchy of authority within myself. The soldier heading into battle doesn't wait to feel courageous before advancing. The elite athlete doesn't postpone training until motivation arrives. The master creator doesn't delay their work until inspiration strikes perfectly. This pattern reveals a profound truth about the architecture of extraordinary achievement. The champions have reversed the relationship most people have with their feelings. Instead of being led by emotions, they lead their emotions through disciplined action. Behind the scenes of every transformational journey lies this common thread: the willingness to act despite emotional resistance rather than because of emotional alignment. This mindset revolution completely rewires how you approach challenges. You stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" and start declaring, "This needs to be done regardless of how I feel." This single shift in perspective creates a consistency that generates remarkable results. What's particularly illuminating about this principle is how it connects to another revelation that completely altered my relationship with motivation: the blueprint for extraordinary achievement reveals this counterintuitive truth: movement breeds motivation, not the other way around. This causal reversal explains why so many remain trapped in cycles of procrastination. They're waiting for motivation to arrive before taking action, but motivation is actually the product of action, not its prerequisite. The hidden truth that changed everything for me was understanding that waiting actively kills motivation. Every moment you spend hoping to feel inspired before beginning is another moment that drains your potential energy for action. The masters have discovered that motivation isn't something you wait for, it's something you generate through decisive movement. This insight doesn't just change what you do, it transforms the entire framework through which you approach achievement. The journey of mastery reveals this essential wisdom. Learn to act independently of your emotional states. This doesn't mean ignoring your feelings or pretending they don't exist. It means developing the capacity to acknowledge them without being controlled by them. This emotional independence creates a remarkable freedom, the ability to move forward regardless of internal resistance. What makes this principle so powerful is that it creates a virtuous cycle once initiated. Action generates results, results build confidence, confidence increases motivation, and increased motivation makes the next action easier. But this entire sequence begins with one critical element: action taken, despite emotional resistance. The revelation is that motivation doesn't precede action, it emerges from it. This pattern appears consistently across domains, from the artist who creates daily regardless of inspiration, to the entrepreneur who continues building despite uncertainty, to the athlete who trains through plateaus. They've all discovered that discipline doesn't restrict freedom. It creates it by liberating you from dependency on fluctuating feelings. If you've experienced that paradoxical moment when you didn't feel like doing something but did it anyway, and then found motivation arriving after you began, type "action first" below. I'd love to hear about your experiences with this principle in action. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding the mechanics of mental mastery. There's a profound revelation that completely transformed my approach to achievement. The mind, like any sophisticated instrument, can be trained to respond to commands rather than suggestions. This insight revolutionized everything when I realized that most people's relationship with their thoughts resembles a negotiation rather than a directive. The person who trains their mind to follow commands rather than feelings enters a dimension of achievement that remains inaccessible to most. This isn't about suppressing your humanity. It's about establishing clear authority within your internal hierarchy. The breakthrough occurs when you stop asking your mind for permission to act and start giving it clear, non-negotiable instructions. This shift in relationship creates a foundation for extraordinary results. Behind the scenes of every journey of transformation lies this common pattern. The champions have developed the ability to command rather than convince themselves. They've discovered that the mind responds to clarity and certainty in ways it never will to hesitation or ambivalence. When you consistently override emotional resistance through decisive action, something remarkable happens. Your brain begins to recognize that feelings no longer dictate behavior. This recognition creates what psychologists call a paradigm shift, a fundamental reorientation in how your mind processes resistance. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that this shift doesn't just improve performance, it unlocks genuine freedom. When your actions are no longer imprisoned by how you feel in any given moment, you gain access to a consistency that generates extraordinary results. What's particularly illuminating about this principle is how it connects to the architecture of lasting achievement. The blueprint for building anything significant reveals this essential truth. Empires aren't constructed through bursts of excitement or moments of motivation. They're built through the relentless repetition of necessary actions, daily, consistently, intentionally. This insight directly challenges our culture's celebration of inspiration over perspiration. The hidden truth that transformed my understanding is that consistency compounds in ways that intensity never can. Small actions performed daily create momentum that occasional massive efforts never will. This principle operates across domains, from physical training to relationship building to skill acquisition. The masters have discovered that the unsexy commitment to showing up day after day ultimately produces results that appear magical to those seeking shortcuts. What makes this principle so powerful is how it completely reframes your relationship with the mundane. When you understand that greatness is built through consistency rather than intensity, you begin to see the profound dignity in daily disciplines that others dismiss as boring. You recognize that the seemingly ordinary actions, when performed with extraordinary consistency, create remarkable results. The journey of mastery reveals this counterintuitive wisdom. The path to extraordinary achievement isn't paved with exceptional moments. It's built through exceptional consistency in ordinary moments. This perspective shift transforms your relationship with daily disciplines from burden to opportunity. Each repetition becomes not just a task completed, but a brick in the foundation of your future achievement. If you've experienced that profound moment when you realize consistency matters more than occasional intensity in creating lasting results, type daily discipline below. I'd love to hear how this principle has manifested in your own journey of growth. Let's explore something that goes far beyond mere habit formation, something that operates at the level of identity itself. There's a profound revelation that completely transformed my understanding of personal power. Each time you act, despite not feeling like it, you're not just completing a task, you're literally rewiring how you see yourself. This insight revolutionized my approach when I realized that discipline isn't just about what you do, it's about who you become in the process. Every time you override emotional resistance through decisive action, you deposit evidence into what psychologists call your identity bank. Each of these deposits reinforces the fundamental belief that you, not your feelings, not your circumstances, control your life. What makes this principle so transformative is understanding that this belief doesn't just change your actions, it becomes your ultimate weapon against the trinity of achievement killers: doubt, fear, and fatigue. Behind the scenes of every journey of transformation lies this common pattern. The champions have accumulated thousands of moments where they chose discipline over comfort. These moments compound not just in results, but in self-concept. The revelation that changed everything for me was recognizing that identity precedes behavior. How you see yourself ultimately determines what you do consistently. This insight completely inverts the conventional wisdom about achievement. What's particularly fascinating about this principle is how it creates an internal resilience that external validation never could. When your sense of self is built on the foundation of keeping promises to yourself, you develop an unshakable confidence that doesn't require constant reinforcement from others. This self-trust becomes the bedrock upon which all other achievements stand, a profound internal alignment that generates extraordinary external results. This understanding connects directly to another revelation that illuminates why so many aspirations remain unfulfilled. The blueprint for extraordinary achievement reveals this sobering truth. Countless dreams have perished, not because they were impossible, but because people stopped pursuing them when motivation inevitably faded. The metaphorical graveyard of human potential is filled not with goals that were too ambitious, but with ambitions that were abandoned when the initial excitement disappeared. The journey of mastery reveals this essential wisdom. Emotional excuses are dream killers, more dangerous than any external obstacle. "I don't feel like it today" has terminated more potential than actual failure ever could. "I'll wait until I'm motivated" has buried more dreams than genuine limitation. This perspective shift completely reorients your relationship with resistance. You recognize that the greatest threat to your aspirations isn't difficulty, but surrender to temporary feelings. What if you approached each emotional excuse as a critical decision point, rather than a valid reason to stop? What if you recognize these moments of resistance as the exact thresholds where growth occurs? This fundamental reframing transforms obstacles from barriers into opportunities. Each emotional excuse becomes not a reason to stop, but a chance to strengthen your identity as someone who finishes what they start. The hidden truth that revolutionized my understanding is that motivation is fundamentally unreliable. It was never designed to sustain long-term action. Trying to build lasting achievement on the foundation of fluctuating feelings is like trying to build a skyscraper on quicksand. The masters have discovered that identity-based discipline creates a foundation that emotional motivation never could. If you've experienced that pivotal moment when you recognized an emotional excuse for what it truly was, a test rather than a truth, type "no more excuses" below. I'd love to hear how you've overcome the emotional resistance that derails so many dreams. Now, I want to go even deeper into the true nature of personal power. There's a profound revelation that completely transformed my relationship with discipline. When you choose discipline, you're not restricting yourself, you're actually choosing power. This insight revolutionized my journey when I realized discipline isn't about limitation, but liberation. It's the gateway to genuine freedom over the forces that keep most people trapped. Every time you choose discipline, you're making a declaration of independence from the three primary saboteurs of human potential: procrastination that steals your time, distraction that fragments your focus, and self-sabotage that undermines your progress. The breakthrough occurs when you recognize that discipline isn't just one option among many. It's the singular path to reclaiming authority over your existence. This mindset transformation fundamentally alters how you navigate daily decisions. Behind the scenes of every journey to mastery lies this common thread. The champions have discovered that living by principle rather than impulse creates a consistency that produces extraordinary results. They've recognized that orienting their actions around purpose rather than mood generates a momentum that fluctuating feelings never could. This revelation doesn't just change what they do, it transforms who they become through the process. What's particularly illuminating about this principle is the profound shift it creates in your relationship with daily choices. When you understand that discipline equals power, you begin to see challenging tasks not as burdens, but as opportunities to strengthen your internal authority. The hidden truth that changed everything for me was recognizing that each discipline choice doesn't just move you closer to your goals, it literally rewires your relationship with resistance itself. This understanding connects directly to another revelation that completely transformed how I approach achievement. The blueprint for extraordinary results reveals this essential wisdom. Discipline isn't punishment, it's self-respect. This perspective shift changes everything when you realize that discipline isn't about denying yourself pleasure, it's actually the ultimate form of love for your future self. The journey of mastery reveals this counterintuitive truth. Discipline is caring enough about your destination to do what's necessary, not what's easy. This insight inverts the conventional understanding of self-care from immediate gratification to intentional growth. The masters have discovered that true self-respect isn't found in comfort, but in commitment, in making the difficult choices today that create freedom tomorrow. What makes this principle so powerful is how it reorients your entire relationship with challenging actions. When you recognize discipline as an expression of self-respect rather than self-restriction, resistance begins to fade. You start approaching difficult tasks not with dread but with dignity. Each disciplined choice becomes not just an action but a declaration of your commitment to becoming your highest self. This mindset revolution creates an internal alignment that generates extraordinary external results. When your actions consistently honor your aspirations rather than your emotions, you develop an authenticity that creates remarkable momentum. This isn't about perfection, it's about progression, about making choices that express genuine care for who you're becoming rather than just who you are in this moment. If you've experienced that profound shift where discipline transformed from feeling like punishment to feeling like self-respect, type "discipline is self-love" below. I'd love to hear how this principle has manifested in your own journey of transformation. Let's explore a counterintuitive truth that completely revolutionized my understanding of freedom. There's a profound revelation that transformed everything when I realized that discipline doesn't restrict liberty, it creates it. Most people operate under the misconception that freedom means the absence of constraints, but the masters have discovered something far more powerful. True freedom comes through the presence of discipline, not its absence. The disciplined person experiences liberation on multiple dimensions simultaneously. They gain freedom from emotional control, no longer hostage to the fluctuating tides of feeling that keep most people trapped in cycles of inconsistency. They experience freedom from weakness, no longer surrendering their potential to momentary discomfort. Perhaps most significantly, they enjoy freedom from regret, no longer haunted by the knowledge that they failed to become who they could have been. Behind the scenes of every journey of transformation lies this common thread. The champions have discovered that discipline isn't just a practice, it's a language through which they communicate their intentions to themselves and to the world. This language of champions speaks with a clarity and conviction that emotional impulse never could. What makes this principle so powerful is understanding that discipline doesn't just facilitate success, it forms its very heartbeat, providing the consistent rhythm that sustains achievement through inevitable challenges. The revelation that changed everything for me was recognizing that freedom isn't the ability to do whatever you want in the moment. It's the ability to do what matters most, despite what you want in the moment. This perspective shift completely reorients your relationship with resistance. You begin to see disciplined choices not as sacrifices, but as investments, deposits into an account that yields returns in the form of genuine autonomy. This understanding connects directly to another principle that illuminates the architecture of extraordinary achievement. The blueprint for transformation reveals this essential wisdom. Each morning presents you with a fundamental choice that shapes not just your day, but your destiny. Will you obey your emotions and remain where you are, or will you command discipline and evolve into who you're meant to become? What's particularly illuminating about this principle is how it reveals the cumulative power of daily decisions. When you understand that each disciplined act plants a seed of greatness, your relationship with ordinary moments transforms completely. The masters have discovered that extraordinary achievement isn't created through occasional heroic efforts, but through consistent, seemingly small choices that compound over time. This insight doesn't just change what you do, it revolutionizes how you value what you do. The journey of mastery reveals this counterintuitive truth. The seeds of greatness often look remarkably ordinary when planted. The workout that doesn't feel significant, the focused hour of deep work that seems inadequate, the healthy choice that appears inconsequential. These seemingly small decisions contain within them the DNA of extraordinary achievement. What appears modest in isolation becomes magnificent in accumulation. This mindset revolution creates an entirely different relationship with daily disciplines. Instead of viewing them as burdens to be endured, you begin to recognize them as investments to be valued. Each disciplined choice becomes not just an action, but a declaration, a statement about who you're becoming rather than just what you're doing. If you've experienced that profound shift where discipline started to feel more like freedom than restriction, type freedom through discipline below. I'd love to hear how this principle has manifested in your own journey toward liberation. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding the fundamental currency of achievement. There's a profound revelation that completely transformed my relationship with results. Emotions are exceptional at making promises, but only discipline consistently delivers on them. This insight revolutionized my journey when I realized that the gap between intention and achievement isn't bridged by feeling, but by consistent action. How many times have you felt inspired about a goal, experienced that rush of possibility, that emotional certainty that this time will be different, only to find yourself in the exact same position weeks later? This pattern reveals something essential about the architecture of achievement. Emotions excel at painting vivid pictures of what could be, but they lack the sustained power to transform those visions into reality. The masters have discovered that discipline isn't just one path to results, it's the only reliable one. Behind the scenes of every transformation lies this common thread. Genuine power doesn't originate from thinking, it emerges from movement. This revelation challenges our cultural obsession with perfect planning and endless preparation. The blueprint for extraordinary achievement reveals this essential truth. Action transforms vision into victory and dreams into dominance. This isn't just poetic language, it's the practical reality of how results are actually created. What's particularly illuminating about this principle is how it exposes the hidden trap that keeps so many potential achievers stuck. The illusion that thinking about something is the same as doing something about it. The journey of mastery reveals this counterintuitive wisdom. Visualization is valuable. Planning has its place, but neither produces results without execution. This insight doesn't diminish the importance of strategy. It simply establishes the proper hierarchy between thought and action. The hidden truth that changed everything for me was recognizing that you can think, plan, visualize, prepare, and study all day, but none of it matters until you act. This perspective shift completely reorients your relationship with preparation. You begin to recognize that planning, beyond a certain threshold, often becomes a sophisticated form of procrastination, a way to feel productive while avoiding the discomfort of actual execution. What makes this principle so powerful is understanding that the world doesn't reward good intentions, perfect plans, or brilliant ideas. It rewards execution. This reality explains why some people with modest talents but extraordinary discipline consistently outperform those with remarkable potential but inconsistent action. The revelation isn't that thinking has no value. It's that thinking without subsequent action has no impact. This mindset revolution transforms how you approach challenges. Instead of endless analysis and preparation, you develop a bias toward action, a default setting that prioritizes movement over perfection. The masters have discovered that momentum created through imperfect action generates far more results than perpetual refinement without implementation. This isn't about being reckless. It's about recognizing that clarity often comes through movement, not before it. If you've experienced that pivotal moment when you stopped overthinking and simply started doing, type action beats analysis below. I'd love to hear how this shift from planning to execution has transformed your own journey of achievement. Let's explore what might be the most transformative insight in the entire journey of achievement. Something that completely inverts how most people approach their goals. There's a profound revelation that revolutionized my understanding when I realized that most people wait for what they believe are prerequisites for action: the right time, the perfect feeling, or the ideal environment. But the hidden truth that changed everything is that power doesn't precede action, it's actually created by it. This revelation illuminates why so many remain trapped in cycles of preparation without execution. They're waiting for some magical convergence of confidence, clarity, and motivation before beginning, not realizing that these qualities emerge from movement, not before it. The blueprint for extraordinary achievement reveals this essential wisdom. The moment you begin, something remarkable happens. Energy appears that wasn't there before. The mind suddenly clears, and confidence grows not from thinking but from doing. Behind the scenes of every transformational journey lies this common pattern. The champions have discovered that action creates its own fuel. This insight doesn't just change what you do, it completely reorients your relationship with resistance. What the masters understand is that motivation doesn't arrive like a visitor knocking at your door. It emerges from within once you've already started moving. This causal reversal explains why waiting for inspiration so often leads to stagnation. What's particularly fascinating about this principle is how closely it parallels fundamental laws of physics. Consider how electricity works. Power doesn't exist until a current flows. Your life operates on the same principle. Strength, clarity, and momentum aren't static qualities you possess before acting. They're dynamic forces generated through movement itself. This perspective shift transforms how you approach every challenge, recognizing that beginning creates the very conditions most wait for before beginning. The journey of mastery reveals another counterintuitive truth. Nothing is harder than starting, yet nothing is more powerful than progress. This insight explains the peculiar difficulty of initiation that keeps so many trapped in endless preparation. That first step carries a disproportionate weight of resistance, the gravitational pull of inaction that must be overcome before momentum can build. Yet once that initial threshold is crossed, something remarkable happens. Progress creates its own momentum. This mindset revolution completely transforms your relationship with beginning. Instead of waiting until you feel ready, that elusive state that rarely arrives on its own, you recognize that readiness is manufactured through movement. The masters have discovered that clarity doesn't precede action, it emerges from it. Direction becomes visible not to the person standing still, but to the one already in motion. This insight doesn't dismiss the value of preparation, but establishes the proper relationship between planning and execution. What if you approached every goal not by asking, "Do I feel ready?" but by declaring, "I'll begin," and let readiness catch up? What if you recognize that the very energy you're waiting for is actually created through the decision to start? This fundamental reorientation doesn't just change your results, it transforms your entire experience of the achievement process. If you've ever experienced that magical moment when energy and clarity suddenly appeared after you started a challenging task, not before, type "movement first" below. I'd love to hear how this principle has manifested in your journey toward your goals. Now, I want to go even deeper into one of the most profound paradoxes in the journey of achievement. There's a revelation that completely transformed my understanding when I realized that most people have the sequence exactly backward. They wait for clarity before taking action, not realizing this approach guarantees they'll remain stuck indefinitely. The hidden truth that revolutionized my journey is that clarity doesn't precede movement. It emerges from it. This insight explains why so many remain trapped in cycles of analysis paralysis. They're waiting for perfect certainty before beginning, not realizing that certainty is manufactured through action, not contemplation. The blueprint for extraordinary achievement reveals this essential wisdom. The path reveals itself only to those who are already walking, not to those who stand still, watching and waiting. This isn't just a motivational metaphor. It's the practical reality of how breakthroughs actually occur. Behind the scenes of every transformational journey lies this common pattern. The masters have discovered that clarity is a consequence of movement, not its prerequisite. Think about learning to drive. You don't gain mastery through reading the manual, you develop it through getting behind the wheel. The same principle applies to every dimension of achievement. What makes this insight so powerful is how it completely reorients your relationship with uncertainty. Instead of seeing uncertainty as a barrier to beginning, you recognize it as the very reason to start. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that uncertainty isn't eliminated through more thinking, it's reduced through action. Each step forward doesn't just advance you physically, it transforms your perception, bringing into focus what was previously invisible. This perspective shift doesn't just change what you do, it revolutionizes how you approach every challenge, recognizing that clarity is earned through movement, not granted before it. This principle connects directly to another dimension of transformation that operates at the level of identity itself. The journey of mastery reveals this essential truth. Each forward step you take doesn't just move you closer to your goal, it literally reinforces your capability at a neurological level. Every repetition strengthens your mind and hardens your will in ways that thinking about action never could. This isn't motivational rhetoric. It's the science of how neural pathways are formed and strengthened. What's particularly illuminating about this principle is understanding how progress becomes addictive in the most positive sense. The more consistently you act, the stronger you become, and the stronger you become, the more naturally you act. This virtuous cycle explains why masters in any domain seem to possess almost supernatural consistency. What appears as extraordinary discipline from the outside is often experienced as natural momentum from within. The mindset revolution occurs when you recognize that identity isn't something you discover through contemplation. It's something you build through action. You don't find out who you are by thinking. You create who you are by doing. Each repetition deposits evidence into your identity bank, building a self-concept that becomes increasingly resilient to doubt and increasingly immune to distraction. If you've experienced that profound shift where taking a single step forward suddenly revealed a path that was invisible while standing still, type clarity through action below. I'd love to hear how this principle has illuminated your own journey of discovery. Let's explore a principle that completely transformed my approach to achievement, something that challenges our cultural obsession with grand strategies and perfect planning. There's a profound revelation that revolutionized my journey when I realized that success isn't constructed through occasional bursts of inspiration or brilliance, but through the unglamorous daily grind of forward motion. The blueprint for extraordinary achievement reveals this essential wisdom. Even the smallest step taken today surpasses the perfect plan scheduled for tomorrow. This insight explains why so many brilliant ideas never materialize into tangible results. They remain trapped in the realm of potential, perpetually being refined but never implemented. What makes this principle so transformative is how it completely inverts the conventional hierarchy between planning and execution. The masters have discovered that imperfect action consistently outperforms perfect preparation. This isn't about dismissing strategy, it's about recognizing that strategy without implementation produces nothing but sophisticated fantasies. Behind the scenes of every journey of transformation lies this common thread. The champions prioritize progress over perfection. They've discovered that momentum generated through consistent small steps creates results that occasional massive efforts never will. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that tiny actions, when performed daily, compound in ways that dwarf occasional heroic efforts. This perspective shift doesn't just change what you do, it transforms how you value what you do. What's particularly illuminating about this principle is how it connects to the architecture of clarity itself. The journey of mastery reveals this counterintuitive truth. Action transforms chaos into clarity in ways that thinking never can. You often begin in a state of confusion and uncertainty, but through movement, something remarkable happens. The noise gradually fades and signal emerges. What was once a fog of options and opinions begins to crystallize into clear direction. This mindset revolution completely reorients your relationship with uncertainty. Instead of seeing confusion as a reason to hesitate, you recognize it as precisely why you must begin. The masters have discovered that clarity doesn't precede action, it emerges from it. Through doing, you discover what works, what doesn't, what resonates, and what feels hollow. You adjust, learn, and evolve, not through contemplation, but through implementation and feedback. What if you approached every challenging goal, not with the question, what's the perfect plan, but with, what's the smallest step I can take right now? This fundamental reorientation doesn't just change your results, it transforms your entire experience of the achievement process. The hidden truth of transformation is that power develops not through waiting for perfect conditions, but through taking imperfect action in existing ones. This principle explains why some people with modest talents but extraordinary consistency consistently outperform those with remarkable potential but inconsistent execution. The revelation isn't that planning has no value, it's that planning must be balanced with immediate action to create meaningful results. Perfect plans without implementation remain nothing but sophisticated dreams, while imperfect action creates tangible progress that can be refined through experience. If you've experienced that pivotal moment when taking a single small step instantly cleared the fog of overthinking that had been keeping you stuck, type "small steps matter" below. I'd love to hear how this principle has manifested in your own journey toward clarity through action. Now, I want to go even deeper into understanding what truly separates extraordinary achievers from everyone else. There's a revelation that completely transformed my perspective when I realized just how rare decisive action truly is. The blueprint for achievement reveals this sobering truth. The world is absolutely filled with dreamers who never begin, people with brilliant ideas, grand aspirations, and detailed plans that never materialize into tangible reality. What makes this insight so powerful is understanding that the simple act of beginning immediately places you in rarefied territory. By taking that first decisive step, regardless of how small or imperfect it might be, you instantly distinguish yourself from the overwhelming majority who never move beyond ideation. The hidden truth behind all achievement is that this distinction alone creates a competitive advantage that's nearly impossible to overstate. Behind the scenes of every journey to mastery lies this common thread. The champions aren't necessarily more gifted than others. They're simply more willing to start. They've discovered that execution itself is the ultimate differentiator in a world obsessed with perfect planning. This mindset revolution doesn't just change what you do, it transforms how you value what you do, recognizing that implementation, even imperfect implementation, outranks flawless imagination every single time. What's particularly illuminating about this principle is how it completely reframes our relationship with the messy process of achievement itself. The journey of transformation reveals this counterintuitive wisdom. Action inevitably brings mistakes, setbacks, and failures, not as obstacles to success, but as the actual pathway to it. This perspective shift creates an entirely different relationship with failure itself. The revelation that changed everything for me was recognizing that failure isn't the opposite of power, it's actually the process of gaining it. Each mistake doesn't diminish your capacity. It expands it through the priceless feedback only experience can provide. Each setback doesn't reduce your strength. It increases it through the resistance that builds resilience. Each repetition, especially difficult ones, doesn't deplete your persistence. It reinforces it through the neural pathways that encode determination. This mindset transformation completely inverts the conventional relationship with failure. Instead of seeing mistakes as evidence, you're on the wrong path, you recognize them as confirmation, you're on exactly the right one, the path of growth rather than the path of safety. The masters have discovered that strength isn't built through success, it's forged through struggle. This isn't just motivational rhetoric, it's the biological reality of how adaptation occurs. What if you approached each failure not as a verdict but as valuable data? What if you recognize that the very mistakes you're trying to avoid are precisely what will build the capacity you're seeking to develop? This fundamental reorientation doesn't just change your results, it transforms your entire experience of the achievement process, turning obstacles from barriers into builders. The mindset revolution creates a completely different relationship with the inevitable challenges of any meaningful pursuit. Instead of being derailed by setbacks, you begin to recognize them as essential components of the journey itself. Not detours from the path, but the actual terrain of growth. If you've experienced that pivotal moment when you realized a failure wasn't defeating you, but actually developing you, type "failure strengthens" below. I'd love to hear how this principle has manifested in your own journey of transformation. Let's explore a dimension of achievement that fundamentally reorients how we approach learning itself. There's a profound revelation that transformed my understanding when I realized that knowledge acquisition follows completely different patterns for doers versus thinkers. The blueprint for mastery reveals this essential truth. Those who act consistently learn exponentially faster than those who merely contemplate. This insight completely challenges our educational model that often prioritizes theoretical understanding over practical implementation. What makes this principle so powerful is understanding the qualitative difference between knowledge gained through action versus knowledge acquired through contemplation. The masters have discovered that experience provides a depth, nuance, and visceral understanding that pure theory never could. This isn't about dismissing intellectual exploration. It's about recognizing its limitations when divorced from implementation. The revelation that changed everything for me was realizing that doers don't just learn different things than thinkers. They learn the same things in a fundamentally different way. Behind the scenes of every journey to mastery lies this common thread. The champions gather experience, build resilience, and adapt through consistent action, while others remain trapped in endless theoretical refinement. This pattern explains why some people with modest intellectual gifts but extraordinary implementation consistently outperform those with remarkable intellectual capacity but inconsistent execution. The hidden truth is that experience creates a feedback loop that accelerates learning in ways pure contemplation never could. This principle connects directly to another dimension of achievement that operates at the level of psychology itself. The journey of transformation reveals this counterintuitive wisdom. Action doesn't just build skill, it silences fear in ways that thinking never can. What's particularly illuminating about this insight is understanding the time-sensitive nature of resistance. The longer you wait between impulse and action, the more opportunity you give your brain to generate sophisticated excuses. The revelation that revolutionized my approach to challenges was recognizing that action creates an immediate psychological shift. The instant you begin moving, something remarkable happens. Your mind transitions from doubt to execution, from questioning to implementing. This isn't just motivational rhetoric, it's the neurological reality of how our brains process risk and uncertainty. Motion literally redirects neural activity from the amygdala, fear center, to the prefrontal cortex, execution center. What makes this principle so transformative is how it completely inverts the conventional wisdom about overcoming fear. Most wait until fear subsides before acting, not realizing this approach guarantees perpetual hesitation, since fear rarely diminishes through contemplation. The masters have discovered that action doesn't follow courage, it creates it. This mindset revolution doesn't just change what you do, it transforms how you relate to resistance itself. If you've experienced that pivotal moment when taking immediate action completely short-circuited the fear that had been keeping you paralyzed, type action first, fear later below. I'd love to hear how this principle has manifested in your own journey of transformation. And so we arrive at that pivotal moment where knowledge meets action, where everything we've explored about discipline, momentum, and transformation converges into a single decision point. The journey we've taken together isn't just about understanding these principles, it's about implementing them in your life, starting today, right now, in this moment. If this message resonated with you, if you felt that spark of recognition when we discussed the battle between discipline and emotion, I'd love to know you're part of this community of action takers. Simply write "discipline over emotion" in the comments below. It's a powerful declaration of the path you're choosing. The insights we've shared deserve to reach others fighting the same internal battles you are. A simple like on this video helps make that possible, creating ripples of transformation far beyond what we might imagine. Your single action creates momentum not just for yourself, but potentially for thousands of others. I create these conversations because I believe deeply in the power of these principles to transform lives, not through motivation that fades, but through discipline that endures. If you want more of these insights delivered directly to you, subscribing to the channel ensures you never miss the next opportunity for growth. There's a video right here that takes these principles even deeper, exploring how to apply them specifically to the goals that matter most to you. Click and continue with me over there, because remember, clarity doesn't come from waiting, it emerges through movement. Take that step now, and I'll meet you on the other side.